The AI use maturity model is a model that tells you what you can do with information depending on how much privileged information is fed into an AI system. Now, this is a model that I have created myself, a maturity model, and it has six different steps. We have, at our lowest level, a system which is a siloed AI system. Now, I want you to understand what privileged information is. Privileged information is basically not something that is publicly available. We're talking about something that is only belonging to an organization that is not basically fed to the general public. So your public AI text systems, ChatGPT and others, most models have never been trained on those things from your organization. And in a siloed AI system, you only have the things that are from the wider public, but nothing from your organization itself, nothing from your private clients. Here we have systems like generative AI systems that can create reports suggesting different tests. We know these. It's ChatGPT, it's Gemini, it's Copilot, it's Claude. It's different systems that have been trained on models where the data, the knowledge, comes from publicly available things. But this is where I want you to think about this, because that's actually relatively restrictive. Do you know the idea of the dark web? It's not that dodgy stuff. There is a whole part of things that are data, even put on networks, that are not shared with the wider public. They're not indexed on our searched engines. And this is actually the vast majority of data when you get into it. It's things like data, the accounting data, it's thousands of different transactions. Every time someone buys something in a supermarket, it's recorded somewhere, but it doesn't mean that it gets indexed on something like a search engine that can later be used by those publicly facing models. So, what we're looking at here is an AI use maturity model where the input is privileged information. And at the siloed AI system, we don't have privileged information. It's still useful. Use it to do general research and information queries, but you're not going to be able to learn much about a document, an organization, or wider clients. Whereas when we're getting into our second level here, we're uploading a document, or even two, or even three. The point is, we now have given this AI system privileged information. We've given it something that the model did not have before. It's specific data that we've uploaded to it. So, okay, you upload client feedback, for instance. Huh? It would be able to do a mood analysis on that client feedback. It's a document, our little Excel sheet with 10,000 lines of customer feedback. We upload it, and maybe we don't want to go through 10,000 lines of information, so we query our document. Tell me about which feedback has been particularly negative. Have there been, and this is even more useful, any complaints about a certain, say, product, a certain sales location, which then could be used to make a decision over that product or that sales location. In case at the second level of maturity, we've given a little bit of privileged information to the system. And of course, you could query that or those documents. But it really gets interesting when we're at an area-focused AI system. In an area-focused AI system, we're looking at a system, an AI system, that has access to a lot more information, but it's within a domain. So let me give an example. You have HR that needs to decide on whether they should, say, hire certain people from the CVs that they have received. On one side, they have our currently open position. They might have job descriptions. They might have analysis of the different hiring needs that we currently have on one side. And on the other, we have all of our candidate CVs that we've received, some of them spontaneous, some directly from positions. And so this AI system, area-focused AI system, would be able to take the inputs of the positions that we have and match them to the CVs that we have to finally match these different things. Our AI system might have access to the particular drive on which you have all your CVs stored and which you have all of your HR documents specific to the situation that are stored for recruitment. But we don't have too many things we can do with this because it's still restricted to a certain domain. It's still restricted to a department, whereas you're going to see our organization-focused AI system is going to have access to all, or I'd like to put an asterisk here, most of, a vast majority at least, of organizational data. And you might think this is science fiction or really difficult to implement, and yet I'm going to tell you that a lot of organizations are actually not that far from this because they already have data warehouses in place. A data warehouse is basically, it's a big place where you put a lot of your information stored in a single place. It can be in a physical location, i.e. server rooms, or it could even be on the cloud, but it's basically been put in a way where your different data can relationally compare to each other, be stored in kind of the same place, and be queried. So we let loose the AI on this privileged information. Remember, this is information that the organization has that is proprietary to it, and that's probably pretty confidential as well. What can we do? So I'm going to give the example that on one side we have our policies and procedures, and the other side we have tons of organizational documents. We have all of our transactions. We have all of our chats, emails. We have every incident report. We have every risk inventory. We have every time there's been PowerPoint uploaded for reporting to management or even the board. And every single time we have something brought up, it could potentially be queried by an AI system that has access to that. And what can you do? You can do a lot more things with this. You would be able to query the system, which is going to go through all of that data, try to understand what could be important for responding to its queries. AI system, tell me about which areas have weaker policies or procedures. Where do we have fewer documented information? Where do we have risks? Now, a risk can have many characteristics. It can be an area where we have weaker controls, where we have greater risks because of high, say, client transactions or high expenditure. In any case, an AI system that would have access to all of these things, crunch it down and come to conclusions about this privileged information. This is a kind of intelligence system using AI over the organization's data. And then you'd have portfolio-focused AI system. This is our 5th level of maturity. Here we're looking at privileged information from comparative organizations. Now, it's not everyone that has access to this, but I'm going to give you a few examples. I was thinking about, say, private equity organizations that have a portfolio of organizations. So they're investing into different organizations, and they have privileged information because they're generally sitting on the board of those organizations. They get PowerPoints, they get reports, they get internal audit reports, risk reports, compliance reports, incident reports. They get all of the accounting figures, public, even some private stuff. And they are flooded with information. They also have other clients. Okay, here's where it becomes interesting. Because they have their other clients, they might be able to use all of that comparative information about all of its clients to understand where or maybe which organizations are better organized, have better policies or procedures, are reporting risks better, or have higher risks themselves. And it's going to be able to take decisions like, okay, what organizations that recently have had bad news are we currently investing in? So bad news is public information, whereas currently investing in is privileged information. What about other queries? Which organization do you think we should divest from given this privileged information? And our final maturity level on this AI use maturity model is the wide focus AI system. Here, AI has access to data from many different organizations. So I'm giving the example of a financial regulator. And now a regulator has access to information from, say, banks, financial institutions, and it will get information reporting on risks and different characteristics from these institutions. And it needs to make sure that these organizations will not create a systemic risk to the entire financial marketplace. With an AI that would have access to information on this kind of wide focus, but of course we're talking about privileged information, so it's not things that have access to everyone's data. On this privileged information, then it would be able to take decisions like which entity should it perform its next inspection of? What organization could cause the greatest systemic risk, given not just their overall weight in the marketplace, but also the data that's been coming out from that organization on a recent basis, or even be able to aggregate large amounts of data from these different organizations to come to a final conclusion about whether it thinks the systemic risk in the marketplace might have gotten better or even worse. So we have our 6 levels of maturity. I especially want to see what we can do with these different levels of access to privileged information. We have examples of types of AI functionalities for kind of governance, risk, and compliance, and let's look at these. If you have a siloed AI system, it only has access to public information that's been fed into these big public models like ChatGPT, Copilot, you name it, and these are useful for information and research. But it's going to be extremely limited when it comes to saying things about the particular organization that you work for, because maybe your organization has had a few news articles written about it. Maybe it's even a quoted public company. It's had an IPO, so it's going to have a lot more information, but it's not really going to have anything privileged, and it's not really going to have necessarily up-to-date information that can tell it much about certain risks or certain things that it could have with better information. Whereas if it is fed things that are specific to an organization, it can detect anomalies for that organization itself. Whether it's fed a document and finds the problem in that document, an area in which it can make conclusions about that area, an organization itself where it could suggest even improvements to an organization's strategy, the portfolio-focused AI system where it could detect kind of anomalies within its giant portfolio, or finally within kind of the wide focus, say the whole financial sector of a country that's being regulated, to be able to detect anomalies. We have sentiment analysis. Sentiments like risks. Now, you might say that risks are supposed to be a bit more quantitative, but they're based on the future. You can't have a risk that's based on the past. It's really something that will tell you about the future. And I have to say that a big part of the feeling about a future is going to be about sentiments. And sentiment analysis, especially changes in our data in a certain way that could show sentiment changes, could be a way of detecting certain information that would be important. There's this idea of leading indicators when there's a problem, say in a marketplace, that one day will lead to a crash. With privileged information and a sentiment analysis, you might be able to come to conclusions about when that crash could be coming, whether it's in 3 years or whether it's going to be in 3 days. And finally, you have natural language processing. Remember I said that the vast majority of data, it might be partly structured. A lot of it is going to be unstructured. A lot of it is going to be really difficult to understand because it's just going to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lines of transactions, of code, of different things that we do not want to read, even just policies or procedures. You look at policies or procedures for one company, okay, that's 10,000 pages. You look at 100 companies, impossible to read. Natural language processing would be able to look through all of that data and put it in a way that we as humans can understand it. Real-time monitoring. This starts from when you are feeding real-time data into a system. The data-specific one would only be when you actually upload a document, but real-time monitoring is when it has access to, for instance, a network, a warehouse, a data warehouse, different systems that get data on a very regular basis, such as a financial regulator collecting monthly information. They're going to get information coming in all the time, so they can analyze it as it comes in. That's real-time monitoring. Think of your internet-based companies that are going to get real-time data from all of its different users. They will be able to look at the real-time data and monitor it in certain ways. We have an AI system looking at, say, e-commerce on an organization-focused AI system, so it's looking at its own system, will be able to monitor the different behaviors of its customers, even individual customers, to know how it can act, change its prices, take products off. For instance, look through customer comments to understand whether, say, a product has just been absolutely problematic and is lowering customer satisfaction with a whole online platform because of that. Predictive analytics. Now, we're going to go in this course through different kinds of data analytics. One of these is predictive analytics, where it gets this information and is going to try to give you a view of things in the future. And part of that view can be used for prescriptive data analytics, which is where you're actually giving advice or even taking decisions on things to do based on the information that it's received. Finally, I'd like to look at systemic threat detection, where we're directly detecting problems or threats within, say, a portfolio. Here we're thinking regulator of a market. We're looking at the whole market. We're thinking about our investment bank that has a large number of positions. It is feeling on its portfolio a threat to the entire system.